Welcome to Chemistry with Dr. Z. I'm Dr. Z, and in this video, I'm going to talk about nanoparticles. So, when we talk about particles, we can categorize the particles based on their diameter into three classes. The first one is coarse particles, and coarse particles have a diameter between 2,500 and 10,000 nanometer. And then the second class is the fine particles, and fine particles have diameters between 100 and 2500 nanometer. The third category or the third class is the nanoparticles. So nanoparticles, they have diameter between 1 and 100 nanometer. Nanoparticles are structures which are 1 to 100 nanometers in size, and they usually contain only few hundred atoms, so very few number of atoms you can find in a nanoparticle. This means that nanoparticles are around 100 times larger than atoms and simple molecules, so around 100 times larger than atoms and simple molecules. So you can imagine that they are very small indeed in size. So, what is the property of nanoparticles that makes them useful? The most important property for the nanoparticle is their surface area to volume ratio. So surface area to volume ratio is basically the surface area of the particle divided by its volume. And the surface area to volume ratio affects the way a particle behaves. For nanoparticles, because they are very small in size, that means that the surface area compared to the volume is quite big. So their surface area to volume ratio is high. That means that nanoparticles have high surface area to volume ratio. This affects the property of the particles. So for nanoparticles, you can imagine because they have really very high surface area to volume, that means that to achieve the same surface area for catalytic action, for example, less quantities of the nanoparticles will be needed. So they will be more effective as catalysts than normal sized particles. This is why nanoparticles have many uses, and this is mainly because of their size. So one of their uses is that they are very useful in making new catalysts because of the huge surface area compared to their volume. So the surface area to volume ratio make them really useful in making new catalysts, as we just explained. The second use is that they can be used in drug delivery. So the nanoparticle can be used to deliver drugs to the specific cells where they should be acting. And the reason behind this is because of their very small size. Because they are very small in size, that means they can easily be absorbed through the cell membranes and through different membranes in the body, and they can easily reach the target site. The third property is related to the fact that some of the nanoparticles can conduct electricity. We explained before and talked about the one of the nanostructures, which was the fullerenes nanotubes. When the nanoparticles can conduct electricity, they can be used in electrical circuits for computer chips. Also, silver nanoparticles have antibacterial properties, so they can be added to polymer fibers, which are used to make surgical masks and wound dressing. And they can also be added to deodorant because of their antibacterial properties. Um, they also can be used in cosmetics, and they can be used in sunscreens. The reason why they can be used in sunscreens because they were found to have better UV protection to the skin than the traditional sun creams. Even though the nanoparticles have really very good uses and wide uses, but it's still a new area of research, and their uses have been under controversy. Um, One of the questions you might find in your GCSE exam is to discuss the controversy of the uses of nanoparticles. So when we discuss the use of nanoparticles, we have to take into account the fact that nanoparticles are still a new area of research. So the effect of nanoparticles on health is not yet fully understood, and it's important to test new products to minimize the risk. So, some people argue that some of the nanoparticles that have been used in health products, they have been actually used before they are completely or fully tested, and their long-term effect is not well known. So, the main issue here is the long-term effect. This is why all products that contains nanoparticles must be labeled clearly, so it will be upon the consumer to decide whether or not to use this particular product. The one of the examples is the use of nanoparticles in sunscreens. So we said that nanoparticles are have better UV um, they have better UV protection to skin than traditional sun creams. However, whether or not these nanoparticles are absorbed through the skin is not known. Whether or not they can actually affect or they can damage cells is not well known. The long-term effect of its usage as well is not known. So it might be useful in one side, but it might have its own harm on the other side as well. This is why the use of nanoparticle has been controversy.